On this episode of the Back Burner Podcast, I'm talking about the best two-player games that aren't two-player games. Stick around.
But a while back in the deadness, back where you wanna now. Ooh, wow, love as you wanna, love as you wanna now.
Greetings, programs. Welcome to the Back Burner Podcast. I'm Zach W. Lorton with Back Burner Games. I publish independent role-playing game content, which you can find at buymeacoffee.com/backburnergames. I also am a board game designer, just starting, and I'm also a board game enthusiast, and I'm glad you're here with me. Today, I'm talking about the top 10 two-player games that aren't two-player games. What does that mean? You're probably wondering. Well, I wanted to take a look at the best multiplayer games that work really, really well at a two-player count. They may not necessarily be made for two players. I'm not talking about games like Lost Cities or Shadowrun Zero Day or something like that that's specifically made for two players. Usually cap out at 4, 5, 6 people, but also play really, really well at two players without a two-player variant. Like some games I really enjoy, like this one, for instance. Mission Red Planet has a two-player variant in the game because it's supposed to be for between 3 and 6 players. I'm not talking about games like that. I'm talking about games that play the same at 2 players as they do at 3, 4, 5, or 6. I've got a lot of interesting games in this list, and some of them are older, so hold tight. Let's jump into the list.
Number 10.
And number 10 on this list is a game that really goes back to the 1980s, takes me back to the arcade days, and that is Terror in MEEPLE City, or used to be called Rampage. You might still have the old version of it. This is from Repos production. It's a great game where you play monsters that are trying to knock down buildings and eat tasty, tasty meeples. This is a great family dexterity game, and it allows you to throw things, and you can even blow buildings down, although with COVID, I don't know that that's such a great idea. But I used to play this game with my nephew all the time, and I remember playing it with 3 or 4 players at the table, and it just wasn't the same as when it's just with one person back and forth. 4 players makes things go faster, but at that 2-player count, it's basically just you and one other person, and you guys are duking it out on the board. This is a fun dexterity game. It's good for adults. It's good for kids. It's one of the first games I ever actually owned, and it shines at 2 players. So that's my number 10, Terror in MEEPLE City.
Number 9.
At number 9 is a really cool, really whimsical looking card game in which you are trying to build trees that have really cool tree spirits. I'm talking about Kodama, the tree spirits. I was first introduced to this game by another local gamer at a game night. We played it as a 2-player game. I've played it at other player counts since then. Again, the head-to-head aspect of this game, at 2 players, it just really kind of works. You're taking branch cards and you're trying to place them onto your tree so that it looks like the branch is growing out of the tree trunk. You get to count the little objects that are in the trees and any subsequent branches leading back to the trunk that can give you points. Every tree looks different by the end of the game, so it's got this really cool you build it, every game is unique type aspect. It really works for, again, players of pretty much any age. I would say if you're 8 years old or higher, you can play this game. Kodama, the tree spirits from Indie Boards and Cards. My number 9.
Number 8.
Number 8 is another game that I used to play with my nephew all the time, and it was one of the first games that he and I really, really liked. It was also one of the first games I remember watching a Watch It Played video for, and it is a sequel, Boss Monster 2, The Next Level. You're playing villains in a side-scrolling 8-bit video game type world, and you're building dungeons, and you're trying to draw heroes into your dungeon so you can kill them. Of course, you will also take a wound if your hero makes it all the way through the dungeon and is able to attack you, but such is life, as they say in 8-bit video game land. Boss Monster 2 is a little bit better than the first Boss Monster game, and while it can be played with up to 4 people, I think this game was really initially designed to be at 2 players. I would like to play this with more than 4, and if you combine games, I'm sure you probably could do that. At 2 players, this is a fantastic game. It's a lot of fun, especially if you remember playing side-scrolling 8-bit video games like this back in the 80s, back in the early 90s, before Super Nintendo, before 16-bit games came out and were a thing. And children, if you don't know what 16-bit and 8-bit means, go ask your parents. They can also tell you about rotary phones. Boss Monster 2, The Next Level, my number 8.
Number 7.
At number 7 is one of the newer games on this list. It's only been out for a couple of years. Keymaster Games did a fantastic job when they released Parks. And if you've played that game, you know not only is the gameplay pretty neat and the game trays insert is kind of cool, but the artwork on this game is really interesting. And that's one of the things that drew my eye to this one. Number 7, Space Park on my list. Space Park is a really cool, very lightweight game that you can play with, again, people of any age. You are playing Space Explorer type scouts and you're going to different places. You're mining gems and then you're collecting those gems, turning those gems into badge cards. Those badge cards are going to give you victory points. It's really easy. The mechanics are really simple. It's a really fun game, and the aesthetics of this game are really cool. You got these really cool 3D miniature ships that act as the tokens you move in the game. It's all about worker movement and set collection. It's a fun little game. It takes about 15, 20 minutes to play. You can learn it in 5 minutes and beat somebody the very first time you play. And pretty much everybody I've taught to play this game has beaten me at least once. Really cool design, really tight design, and it's really good at 2 players because there's nothing to get in the way. The 2-player count of this game is just a whole lot of fun. It's just you and one other person staring down the barrel of space, that cold, dark, lifeless barrel of space. But the artwork is pretty. Space Park, my number 7.
Number 6.
At number 6 is a game that I actually just sold to somebody else in the St. Louis area because I could never get this game to the table anymore. I really wanted to, but most people I played with never really wanted to play it. There was always something else, something new, something shinier, something that didn't have a theme park theme. I'm talking about Unfair. Unfair from Good Games Publishing and Cool Mini or Not or Simon or whoever, whatever they call themselves now. I don't know. A really well-produced game that's got a couple of expansions to it. You get to build a theme park, and there are all sorts of different themes that you can make the theme park. You can make them robots. You can make them pirates. One of the things that people don't like in this game is that there is a take that element to this game. And that's why the sequel, Funfair, did as well as it did, because people like the idea of building the theme park, and some people really don't like the take that aspect of it. I think the take that aspect of it is good because it's kind of optional. Yes, there are some bad things that happen to everybody in the second half of the game, but in terms of you taking actual negative action towards the other players, that's completely optional. One of the reasons I think this game shines as a 2-player game is the same reason that Boss Monster shines at a 2-player game. It's kind of a tableau building game. Works a little bit differently. You can be amazed at what you're able to do with your theme park when you put things together. If you handle your hands right, you manage the cards that you've got, and you make wise decisions as you draft during the game, you can really get a lot done. And when it's just you and one other player, it really tightens the competition. So that's why I think this is a really great game to play at just 2 players. My number 6, Unfair.
Number 5.
Number 5 is a board game classic. It's got one of the first examples of tile laying in board games, and it's got an old school theme. That's basically building farms and cities and roads and rivers. And hey, we're talking about Carcassonne. And it doesn't matter that it's old. This game is a classic. There's a reason it's still so well regarded this many years after its release. It's a lot of fun. And even if you only have the base game, which I believe now includes the river expansion, and you don't play with any of the other expansions, it's still a very satisfying game. The game takes about the same amount of time, whether you're playing with 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people, or more people, maybe with more people. I honestly haven't played with any of the other expansions. But at the base game level, 2 players is a great count for this game. It's a lot of fun. It gives you great strategy. You can play a really nice, fun, relaxing game, or you can be as cutthroat as you want to be. The luck of the draw from the tiles makes a big difference in what you're going to be able to do from turn to turn. You can try to use some tiles that might otherwise give you points to block what the other player is going to do. At 2 players, that's a great, great strategy. I've seen that happen to me a lot. I've done it with other people. I've played this game on the app, and it's a really clean implementation on the app. So I cannot recommend this one enough, but it's still only number 5 on my list. Carcassonne.
Number 4.
When I first found out about deck building games, I started to buy a bunch of deck building games. I couldn't get enough of them. This one game is a game that I would love to show to my wife and see if she would be willing to play it for me, because to me, this is the deck builder version of Scrabble. It's paperback from Fowers Games. You might also put hardback, which is the sequel, in this space. But it's a fun game where you get to just create words from the cards that are in your hand. You can purchase new cards that give you letters and letter combinations and also give you pennies. And every word that you make gives you a certain number of pennies, so you can buy more cards. Some of the cards even give you abilities to where you can attack another player, or they will give you bonuses, things that you can use on your next hand, or they might give you restrictions, especially if it provides you with a lot of points. All sorts of ways that you can make this game work for yourself. I've played this at 4 players. I've played it at 3 players. I've played it at 2. And I played it solo. And the 2-player game count is really kind of cool because turns go fast. If you know what you're doing and you've got a good vocabulary, and the other person that you're playing with also has a good vocabulary, and you both know deck building games, you don't have to teach one person how deck building works, which is its own learning curve in and of itself. Just ask anybody who's never played Clank before or a deck building game before how that can work. But one of the cool things about this is that the theme is really easy to understand. You say Scrabble in a deck builder and people are like, got it. I know exactly what this looks like. It's not that hard to grok, and at 2 players, this just kind of whizzes by. It's a fun game. I really enjoy it. That's why this one is number 4 on my list. Paperback from Fowers Games.
Number 3.
I think I said I like deck builders. Did I say I like deck builders? Because I like deck builders. So yeah, when I said I purchased a lot of deck builders right out the gate when I first started collecting games, I'm not kidding. And this one hit me up big time. Trains Rising Sun specifically is the one I'm looking for. Not the first one, not Trains, but Trains Rising Sun. This is one of the more odd implementations of a train game that I've seen before because visually it's not very appealing. You've got trains that are being placed in these hexes, and each hex represents a certain kind of terrain. And it might cost you a little bit more to, cross over a mountain or into a field, or maybe you have to go around a certain type of terrain. You can build stations in cities, and how much you have to pay for this station might depend on how many stations are already there. But it's an easy game to figure out. And one of the reasons I think this works really well at 2 players is because of the board implementation. See, when they produced Trains, they had one big giant board that everybody would travel along, and well, at a 2-player count, this is a lot of room. However, Trains Rising Sun gives you not just one, but 2 2-player boards. So you can have a 2-player experience with the same scale of a 3 or 4-player experience. It wouldn't be quite as much of a challenge or quite as crowded as if you were using the full-size board. But at 2 players, those 2-player boards are really great. There are also expansion boards that you can purchase. It's not the typical type of train game that you might see most people playing. It's not any type of a drawing game. It's not an 18xx game. And if you're looking for something that works really well at 3, 4, and 5 players and is more visually interesting than this one, I would check out Whistle Stop. However, as a 2-player game, Trains Rising Sun, I think really, really works because of the different size boards. And as such, it falls at number 3 on this list.
Number 2.
At number 2 is one of my favorite board games because of the unique implementation that I see in this game. You don't see it much in other board games. In fact, I've only seen it in a couple other board games, and that's a match 4 mechanic. I'm talking about Paradox from Brian Surrey and Split Second Games. Sadly, Split Second Games is no more. They are defunct. And that's a shame because this game is a really fun game. However, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Elf Creek Games is going to be releasing the Paradox Initiative, a second version or a new updated edition of Paradox. In Paradox, you are taking the place of scientists who are trying to save worlds in your solar system from a quake that is threatening to damage worlds, fracture them. You're trying to save space-time at each one of these worlds, both in the present, the past, and the future. And if you can do that for all 3 of them, plus the matrix that comes with that world, you get the most points for that world. The idea is to earn the most victory points, and whoever earns the most wins the game. But it uses a really cool match 4 mechanic. You use these little energy discs to collect and rescue cards from different timelines. However, depending on which timeline you save, that can trigger the quake, and the quake can advance and do damage to some of the world. And that can cause you not to score any points for that particular world. It's a fun game. There's a good balance to it. It takes about 2 hours to play at a 4-player count. And at 2 players, I think it's really a lot of fun. It's a little bit tighter. It's a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. It's just a good experience at the table. When you go head to head with somebody in something like this, sometimes you make decisions that are going to affect the other person, and sometimes you're just focusing on what you're doing. Paradox made waves for a couple years after it was released, and I know a lot of people that really, really enjoy this game. It didn't get its due the first time around, so this time around, I really think it's going to be a great one. My 2-player game, number 2 on this list, Paradox.
Number 1.
At number 1 is a game that I find has been probably one of the more unique board games I've come across. It's got a modular board. It uses dice in place of ships, and it's an abstract game that gives you a sort of 4X feel in about a half hour. I'm talking about Quantum. This game made a splash when it was released, and Shut Up and Sit Down did a fantastic review of the game, which I really enjoyed, and it made me want to check the game out even more. And the miniature market had several copies of the game for about 60% off on their ding and dent shelf, so I went ahead and bought it. No damage to the actual components, thank God. It's such a unique game, a really cool abstract game. Again, one of those games where you can teach to somebody, they could very well beat you the very first time they learn how to play the game. There are certain rules in the game that you have to abide by because each face on the die gives you a different ship ability. And the dice are ships. If you haven't played this game in person, I suggest you check it out on Board Game Arena. It's a lot of fun. The board is modular, so you can set the board up at different sizes and in different shapes for different player counts. I think the 2-player count of this game is so much fun. You can play this aggressively and you can go after the other players and destroy their ships if you want to, or you can stick to yourself and just try to explore the space as best you can and try to plant your quantum cubes onto the planets as quick as you possibly can, because the first person to run out of quantum cubes wins the game. There's all sorts of different setups for this game, even at the 2-player count. So I would highly recommend you check that out. There's also a bunch of information on their listing on Board Game Geek. One of the reasons I no longer own this game is that because it's an abstract game, I can't really play it solo, at least not very well. I never found a solo variant that I could sink my teeth into, nothing that gave it the feel of an actual, one-on-one game or 3-on-1 game. It gives you tips on how to create new layouts for the game as well. And there's a lot that you can do. The replayability factor in this game is high. It's one I highly recommend if you can find a copy or if you can get on Board Game Arena and check it out. My number 1 on this list, Quantum. So do me a favor, comment below what you think of these games, if you've played them, if you haven't played them, and let me know what you think is a really great game to play at 2 players that is made to be played at more. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you get a chance, make sure you check out my storefront at buymeacoffee.com/backburnergames. I produce independent role-playing games and role-playing game content. If you're looking for a way to dip your toe into the pool of role-playing games, my games are probably going to be right for you because they're designed to be played in short sessions, one-shots, small campaigns. Rules light. You don't have to keep track of a whole lot of bookkeeping from game to game. If you sign up as a member, you'll get a cool starter pack. I'll send you a couple different games. Plus, you can also commission your own role-playing game if you'd like to. And you can purchase a print and play version of one of the games that I'm excited about, which is called Lost Prayers. Check it out, buymeacoffee.com/backburnergames. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching this episode. If you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, share it with your friends, all that stuff. Thanks for tuning in. This is Zach W. Lorton, signing off.
Commission your own customized role-playing game and get other RPG content by showing your support for Backburner Games at buymeacoffee.com/backburnergames. This podcast copyright 2021. All games, titles, images, video, and music featured in this podcast are the property of their respective copyright owners. If not satisfied with this podcast, please return it for a full refund.
On this episode of the Backburner Podcast, I'm going to be talking about the best On this episode of the Backburner Podcast, I'm talking about the best 2-player games that aren't 2-player games. What? On this episode of the Backburner Podcast, I'm talking about the best 2-player games that aren't 2-player games. On this episode of the Backburner Podcast, I'm talking about the best 2-player games that aren't 2-player games. This again? Yeah. Train's Rising Sun gives you not one, but two-player boards. So you've got, and that's upside down. But Train's Rising Sun gives you not just one, but two-player boards. You know how many takes I've done of this?